want to have a short remark on gifts. All of us have a spiritual gift, at least one. A number of you out there have multiple gifts. And it's interesting that your spiritual gifts often are linked to your natural gifts. Like some of you, Mark Schoenberg, for instance, has a gift for evangelism, but he's also a salesman. A lot of people that have the gift of evangelism also are good salesmen. And he could just use his gift for making money as a salesman, but he doesn't. Others have the gift of administration, like Larry, Ron Dvorak, and they could just use that to make money, but they use it in the church in a very valuable way. Others have like Dot and her sister. They have gifts of helps and mercies, and they could just use that to make money with. But they use it for the spiritual gifts and benefiting the body as a whole. Others have very good talents in construction, mechanical things, and they could just use those for their own benefit. Ernie Richardson, Phil Schoenberg, Jerry Keller. Others, Bradshaw, have these gifts, but God has used them in the ways that they can use those for advancing the church. And all of these gifts that we have can be used for benefit. Like some people have the gift of giving, but they spend it on themselves, live an opulent life, and never share what God has given them that talent to make money for or to teach. Others are teachers who have these gifts of teaching. They can just use it to make money, but they use it for benefiting the body of Christ, sharing those things. And I'm just saying that your talents, we're going to talk about a big plan of God. He's basically brought out of the universe into existence. He's brought a plan that could come about. And sometimes in 6 billion people, you feel like you're lost here, but you're not. You're a part of that plan, and you have a future in it. Even the bad people like Hitler and others, have purposes in God's plan. It's not for good for them, but they're all into that. For the believers, as brought out in the first deal, in being in Him, you have a different portion in the history of the universe. And the interesting thing, and if you look at Isaiah 40 through to the end in 66, one of God, and he repeats it many times. How many times these other gods, you take a piece of wood, carve it, bow down to it, and call it your God, and the other end you burn to cook your food on. And he says, and they nail them up and put some silver on them and put nails and set them so they don't totter around, and you got to carry them around, these gods that you've got. He mocks at them. But he says, I not only make the few past and have done it, but he says, I'll tell you the future. He says, let these gods, if they're so good, tell you what's going to happen. And he does it time after time. And I think in the study of things, I'm going to do a series here on, as the Lord permits, on prophecy, on what lies ahead. But to do that, you've got to go back in time and see what God had planned, what He's declared, where He's going with this thing. And this thing is a very complicated thing. God has a mind not only to run a universe of 400 billion galaxies, each with 100 billion stars in them, the size of our sun on the average. It's incredible. But He's organized it so each of us, 6 billion people, all this plan works like a piece of clockwork. Integrated in this plan is not only God and the Father, it's the Holy Spirit's working in it, Christ is working in it, Satan works in it, humans work in it, the whole thing works together. Nature works in it. I'm fortunate to be here today. Yesterday I was out mowing, going through some Johnson grass that was 6 or 7 feet tall. And we had an old well there at one time, the people before that, and the shaft was about 30 feet long, this thing that goes down to pump the stuff up, and it was laying in the grass. I didn't see it. And this tractor somehow, I can't believe it, I was lined up with that thing, And somehow that wheel flipped that thing up. That thing came up, and I mean just about impaled me. I could barely get to the clutch and the brake to get that thing stopped before it just ran through me and shoved me out the back, because the tractor is going to continue to move ahead. Your foot's off the clutch, and it just keeps going. And our life is short, but I see it as a divine providence. I'm here today, and that I'm speaking. And the odd thing is, as Justin was speaking up there, I said, what's he doing up there? He's drawing out a timeline that is exactly what and I wasn't even supposed to speak today. But because of some circumstances, I talked to Larry if it would be okay to switch and everything, and he says, well, this would be great. I can speak next week. Give me a little more time. It's the first time I've had that happen. And the Lord's working this out. But this very thing that he's speaking about and laying out this timeline of God's working in history is exactly where we're going, because prophecy is the future. Life is all a history, whether it's future, a past, present, or future. And we're involved in that process. All of us are temporal. That's the one thing about humans. Angels are not temporal. Gabriel looked the same probably at the time of Daniel. He looked at the same time that he's at the birth of Christ. Doesn't age. There's certain beings and things that are playing a role in this whole history, and it's woven through. He's got covenants that he works with, God does. He's got dispensations he works with. He's got peoples he works with. He's got angels he works with, both good and bad. There's a lot of entities that are woven into this thing, and it's down to the details. He even says, Christ says, even the birds of the air, sparrow, are sold two for a penny in the market, and yet one of them doesn't hit the ground. That your Father hasn't taken note of that. In other words, plan. So everything down to this details it takes a mind unbelievable. How do you coordinate evil things when you're not evil? How do you arrange the things? Who knows? But we're going to cover into this a little bit of where this thing's going, because not much is talked about prophecy, or it's very disparaging, those that work. I was at a conference about 2 weeks ago of some of the prominent Reformed Baptist theologians in the country. These guys are strong believers. They understand the doctrines of salvation, of the scriptures, etc., except that they're all millennialists. And a number of them had been premillennial. And there's kind of a disparaging of the things like the Left Behind series, or LaHaye, and some of these others. And there's been a prominence, a rise again of the Reformed deal of, which wasn't any theology at all, eschatology at all. They didn't have any. Luther and Calvin didn't, except the return of Christ, that's all they knew. And they just adopted what would have been the Roman Catholic position. They didn't study, didn't even write a commentary on Revelation, Calvin or Luther. Why? They didn't understand it. But it's very important, and the early church understood it for 3 centuries. Irenaeus wrote in great detail of what was going to take place, of what we believe today. Now, this was brought back to life in the 1800s by a progenitor of the Plymouth Brethren, John Nelson Darby. And all he did was bring back what the early church had believed for 2.5 centuries. Now, these Reformed people try and bring people, well, there were some that were all mills. I said, well, not the prominent ones. Justin Martyr, Papias, who was a disciple of John, Irenaeus, who was a disciple of Papias. All these guys wrote in detail. And even Eusebius in the 4th century said, oh, that Papias was a small mind. He thought there'd be a kingdom, an earthly kingdom on earth. Of course, Eusebius was, although he's a church historian, left a lot to be desired even personally. And things changed with Augustine, with this city of God, the conversion of Constantine. Augustine thought that they would brought in an amillennial position, that the church would actually bring about the kingdom of God on earth, and that Christ would come at the end of that time, and things like that. These things penetrated, but they also rob the believers of a full knowledge of the scriptures, also a full hope of the future. And I'd like to go back. Let's just go back with me a few. We're not going to look up all the passages. You remember with Adam and Eve? Now there's deal of whether there was a covenant with Adam and Eve, because in the others that they mentioned, they're all covenants. I'll establish my covenant. I'll establish my covenant. It looks like there was a covenant with them that if you do this, and it was a conditional covenant, then you'll just don't eat of the tree of knowledge of good and evil. Well, with the fall of man in the garden, they ate, they begin to die, and we all, as their descendants, suffer from the same thing. Now, it's interesting that he says at the very beginning, the serpent's there. And we know from the scriptures who that was. That was Satan, working through the possession of a serpent. And evidently he was able to stand up because afterwards he's to crawl on his belly. And even in Revelation it says that ancient serpent, the devil or Satan, describing who he is. But he says, God says an interesting thing there. He says to the serpent, he says, I'm going to put enmity between you and the woman, between her seed, singular, and you. And he says, he will bruise your head, but you will bruise his heel. And in this that I'm going to trace through, I'm not going to deal with all the layers and the intricacies of this past history or the future, but we're going to concentrate on, in this series, on God, who's the creator of it all, Satan, who's the other counterpart in this thing. He's a creature, but evil, and his angels. And then you have mankind, all of mankind, the Goyim, the nations, which were not nations at the beginning. And then you're also going to have the nation of Israel. The Reformed people have felt that the church has been, that Israel and its promises have been absorbed into the church. Consequently, they don't understand anything about what's taking place in the world today, the Middle East, or the things that are involved, or the people involved, or why the struggle for the land. Why is the land of Israel so important? The title to it. Why is the concentration of the whole world on this? Why are the Arabs against them? And who are the Arabs anyway? We're going to see a strand of Ishmael in this. What takes place then is that Satan is always working, not only in the fall, he's the tempter. He's trying to break this link between man and God. What takes place next? From Adam to Noah. Satan and some of his angels in particular, we know, evidently had offspring through women. The term is used, and let me read these passages in Genesis 6 so you get full flavor. It's also, these things are also explained even better in 2 Peter and Jude. Now it came to pass, this is verse 1, came to pass when men began to multiply on the face of the earth, and the daughters were born to them, that the sons of God, and that term is only used of angels. It's not used of men. Some think that it's the godly line of Seth, but it's not. And we'll see why. That they saw that the daughters of men, that they were beautiful, and they took wives for them, of whom all they chose. And the Lord said, my spirit shall not strive with man forever, for indeed he is flesh, and yet his days shall become 120 years. The Lord was angry, and he explains that he's going to destroy the world later here, because man's heart is evil only. Well, what would it have to do with the marrying of the sons of God and the daughters of men? Why should that set God off in such a drastic deal in which he's going to destroy the whole human race, basically, except for a small number of people? Because this is a mixing of spiritual beings, angels, and men, and the descendants of these are called Raphaim, giants. And it says in 2 Peter and Jude that these crossed over the line and went after strange flesh. And the offspring of that was these giants, as we'll see here. These angels that crossed over this line, when the flood of Noah came about, they were judged and locked up in chains. There's demonic powers, angels, fallen angels that are locked up. We got a bunch of them that are free out there, but not this one that crossed over the line. It probably gives rise to our myths of Atlas, Hercules, these giants of old who are what we call demigods or half gods. One of their parents was a god and the other one was a human. It's a strange deal, but he's trying to mix this in because the plan of God does not involve, since the fall of Satan, there is no redemption plan for the angels, the fallen angels. Christ didn't die for them. We know that from Hebrews. He doesn't do that. And so he's trying to confuse the plan by mixing. Just like they did in Sodom and Gomorrah, it says, in the same matter, they wanted to mix the seed of humans with the seed of animals. Do you see what I'm saying? And they went after strange flesh, men with men and women with women, and also bestiality. And so Satan is working, whether it's the fall of man, or then he's going to confuse the plan and try and integrate the angels into this plan because they're half humans, these results of these things, the Raphaim. The Lord is angry with this thing, and he's going to wipe them out. It looks like one strand evidently crossed over that time. Evidently, Ham's wife was from the line of Cain, and the Canaanites that arise afterwards, what are they? Raphaim again. Who has to get wiped out by Israel? The Raphaim, the giants, the Goliaths and others who had this genetic strand evidently, and he's going to wipe them out. And they're called Canaanites. Why? They're descendants of Cain. And the Cain of old, before the flood. And the land's called the land of Canaan. Strange things in history. But Satan works strange things, but God even works more unusual things. He's going to wipe out that whole race of them. And let's read on in this passage. The Lord said in verse 3, "My spirit shall not strive with man forever, for he is indeed flesh, yet his days shall become 120 years. There were giants in the earth in those days, and also afterwards, when the sons of God," repeats this thing, "came into the daughters of men," in other words, had physical relationships, "and they bore children to them. And these were the mighty men of old, the men of renown. Then the Lord saw that the wickedness of man was great in the earth, and every intent of the thoughts of his heart were only evil continually. And the Lord was sorry that he had made man on the earth, and he was grieved in his heart." Why? Just because they produced giants? No. It's a mixture of race. "So the Lord said, I will destroy man whom I have created from the face of the earth, both man and beast, creeping things and birds of the air, for I'm sorry that I've made them." But it says, "But Noah found grace in the Lord, in the eyes of the Lord." So we have a selection at this time. The human race is reduced back to one line. This is the line of Noah through Seth. The rest of them are wiped out. And he makes a covenant with him. And this is a covenant with all mankind. The rainbow, I'll no longer destroy the earth by flood. Doesn't mean he won't destroy by fire. But he makes this covenant. And even the wicked people, when you see the bow in the air, it's called common grace. He sends his rain upon the just and the unjust. And he's made a covenant with all men, even if they're wicked, that he will not destroy them again because of the flood. And he says, "I will make a covenant with you and all your descendants." This deal of making covenants is very important. But it also begins a dispensation. The covenants and the dispensations are linked. And what you have to realize is the covenant is a contract. And in almost all these parties, God is one side and the humans are the other. The problem with them all is that the humans fail on their side. Now, some of the covenants are conditional. Like the one with Noah. Did they live up to it? No, they went out and worshiped other gods. Is the covenant with Moses, was it good forever? No, it has a time set. It's finished already. And it was only with a particular group of people. But there's another covenant that comes after Noah that becomes very important. God begins his plan of redemption. You know that Noah was named by his father because he thought he's the one that will save us from the curse. All he did was save mankind. And even Noah afterwards, you know, some of the things that weren't too savory took place with Noah. And also, afterwards, there's a failure always in all these things. And that's why there's new covenants. But God begins his plan, and with his covenants, he's going to carry out his plan of redemption. And it carries into the future, too, by the way, his plans. Let's go to Genesis 12. Now, this is where you begin to get the problem with some of the Reformed, amillennial people. There's some post-mills, some Reformed people that are post-mills. That means, what this means, let me explain a little bit. It has to do with what do you do with the millennium? And we're going to come to that in this study. Revelation 20, the 1,000 years. Where does this lead to? And what is, the amillennial don't believe there's a millennium. They allegorize a thing to death. They won't admit it. These are good friends of mine. They're very strong Christians, but they don't understand, and they do what they would never allow anyone to do in the area of what we call soteriology, salvation, or the scriptures. And a lot of it is because they do not understand that in prophecy, you generally have more than one fulfillment of the prophecy. Let me give you an example. You remember when Christ, they fled, his parents fled from Herod. They went down in Egypt, and then he came back when Herod was dead. He says, bring him back. And it says, I shall bring my son up out of Egypt. The problem is, with the amillennialists, is they take that as referring to the same person. The prophecy has to do with Israel. And they just say that Jesus is a spiritualization of Israel. No, it's a dual prophecy, and nothing's allegorized. Did a son come up out of Egypt in each case? Yes. Israel, in the first case, through Moses. Did Jesus come up out of Egypt? Yes, literally. Nothing's allegorized. The prophecies sometimes have more than one fulfillment. Give you another example. In Isaiah 7 and 9, it tells that a virgin or a young woman in Hebrew will bring forth a son. Was that fulfilled in the days of Isaiah? Yes. It explains in the passage that it was fulfilled. Does it have a dual fulfillment? Yes. Matthew quotes it as happening in the person of Christ. But he uses in that case not the general term, but parthenos, a virgin, which it can be. Their problem is they want to make them two the same thing. But you know from the fulfillment of these prophecies, it was fulfilled in Isaiah's day. A young woman did bring forth a son. His name was called Emmanuel. And yet for the future, there's a future fulfillment. Almost all of your prophecies have dual fulfillments. They do not refer to the same person. You've got to distinguish that. It's very clear in these passages, and the people confuse them in their mind, and they come up with all kinds of weird stuff. Now let's go to the case of Abraham. Genesis 1 through 3. Now the Lord said to Abram, let me back up there. This is very interesting. Abram is known as Abram before. What that means is a father of many people, of many. His name is changed to Abraham because that means a father of many nations. It's a change in his term. Do you know why it's so funny? Abraham's past the age of having children. So was Sarah. He didn't go out. Some of the Jews say, it's nice to be the chosen people. He didn't choose a people. He chose a man and made a nation out of him, a man that couldn't have children. And not only that, he's going to become the spiritual father of many nations. And not just spiritual ones, physical ones, Ishmael. Are there promises to Ishmael? There certainly are, as well as Isaac. But the line is to come through Isaac. And the promise of the land is through Isaac, not through Ishmael. And let's read this prophecy. Now listen, this is an unconditional covenant. There are no conditions placed on Abraham. If you do this, this will happen. Okay? This is unconditional, and God is the guarantor of the fulfillment of this thing. And the Lord said to Abram, go out of your country and from your family and from your father's house to a land that I will show you. Where is he at this point? Let's back up, 31 and 11. And Terah took his son Abram and his grandson Lot, the son of Haran, that was Abram's brother, and his daughter-in-law Sarai, his son's Abram's wife, and they went out with them from Ur of the Chaldees, that's down south in Iraq, and they went out with them from Ur of the Chaldees to the land of Canaan, and they came to Haran and dwelt there. In other words, they didn't make it to the land of Canaan while Terah is alive. They went up, from Ur of the Chaldees, which is in the lower Euphrates, Tigris-Euphrates Valley. They go up to Haran, which is near the headwaters, and don't go all the way to the land. Terah stops there, he dies there, Haran dies there, and they name the place after this one son. Then, at this point, that's where Abram, God says, go out from here, from your people, from this to a land that I will show you. And I will make you a great nation. 1, I will bless you and make your name great. 2, and you shall be a blessing. I will bless those who bless you and curse him who curses you. Look at history. How about the descendants of Abraham? More recently, we've seen Hitler. Curse him, kill him. Where'd the curse fall? Back on the Nazis. And Germany's lived to regret it horribly. Whoever blesses you, I will bless, and whoever curses you, I will curse. Now, this is important, too, when you take an amillennial position and you say, well, these Jews are unbelieving Jews. And the Jews, by the way, have been in the last century and a half really a plague on mankind. Look at Marx. Has there been a worse thing in there? Freud. Almost all the revolutionaries in the Russian Revolution were Jews. Trotsky and a bunch of others. Look at even modern day. All these bad economic and political theories are promulgated and initiated by Jews, unbelieving Jews. So you could say these people they've got the curse. That's not true. They're unbelieving and they will not participate in that, as Paul will see later in Romans 9 through 11. He says, not all of Israel is Israel. But he says, have they fallen so as to be done away with? No. And he talks about it, and we'll get into that later. What people have said, well, these Jews are dirty people, and even Luther was very hopeful in the Jews at the beginning, and they didn't react well. And he says, curse that nation. And it has some very anti-Semitic comments. Even today, you have some Jews that are so bad, like Noam Chomsky, linguist at MIT, very prominent leftist, and he's an anti-Semitic Jew. Can you believe it? And Hitler was probably a quarter Jewish. You have these things and you say, there's something wired wrong with these people. But these covenants are not based on their performance, nor the majority of them going in this. Do you see what I'm saying? And anyone that becomes amillennial says, oh, they're all past. All these fulfillments have been past. The Jews have the nation of Israel has no more future promises.